Hi, It Girls. Welcome to the It Girls Guide. And today we're going to be talking about confidence. If you're listening and not watching, I have Puck here today, my dog, who is very confident on his own. We'll see if he stays with me. But I've instilled, I think, some good confidence in him. I give him his affirmations every morning. He doesn't speak English, so we'll see if that sticks. But he's pretty confident on his own. So I wanted to talk about confidence because it's something that, there Puck goes. I wanted to talk about confidence today because it's something that a lot of my friends and I talk about often. Not that my Instagram following is all that big, but when I do ask me anything, that's something that friends ask me often is, how are you so confident to wear something like that, to do the things that you're doing? And I think that the assumption is that, you see someone who's confident and assume they've always been that way. And typically that's not the case. I think the phrase I like to use is confidence is earned, right? You're not necessarily born confident. And, I've learned from a lot of people. I've had a lot of life experiences that have brought me to this point. And it's something I just felt like might be something I should share with you guys. I think confidence affects a lot of things in your life, right? So for me, it affects how I present myself at work. It affects how I interact with my friends. It affects how I am in a relationship. Confidence affects how I feel in an outfit. If you're someone who's ever had anyone come up to you and say, "Oh, you're really brave for wearing that," or, "Oh, I could never pull that off." That's something I hear all the time. And to be honest, at first it would offend me a little bit because I would be like, are they saying they don't really like my outfit? And then I realized they're thinking, "Oh, I couldn't pull that off," or I that's something maybe a little outrageous that I wouldn't be able to wear. And really the ability to wear something, that's maybe a little outrageous or would make someone else uncomfortable, it comes from confidence, right? And the same way that, how did you get that job, or how did you walk into that meeting and command a space? It's confidence. And like I said, confidence in something that people kind of assume you've always had, but it is earned. And I figured I would talk to you guys a little bit about some of my experiences, maybe tell some stories about some friends' experiences. But for me, I have not always been a confident person. That is something that's come to me honestly pretty recently in the last couple of years. And it's something I had to work really hard on. And I think the main thing about gaining confidence is really about accepting yourself. If you don't know these things about me, I'll just kind of give you a little background. My ethnic background, I'm Black, Creole. I was born and raised in New Orleans. And one thing my parents were really focused on was education. And so the first, as my parents started to make more money, the immediate thing was we have to get them into private school and have to do, all the things schooling wise, right? When it comes to New Orleans, it's diverse in that we have, lots of Black people in New Orleans, but otherwise it's not very diverse. And especially when it comes to private school, I was always one of a couple of Black students in my class. And I think it can be really difficult to become confident or secure in yourself and accept yourself when you're surrounded by people who don't look like you. And let's be frank, oftentimes are looking down on you in certain ways. And it's not that I enjoyed my experience growing up in that regard, but I do think it taught me a lot of things, right? So I was always hyper aware that I was different from most of my peers. But when it came to how I was in the home, I was surrounded by people that look like me. My family looks like me, right? So it was a little bit confusing for me. But I think what stands out to me in my childhood is that I was so afraid for so long, or insecure. I was so insecure for so long about who I am and what I looked like because of the reactions from other people. And it's not necessarily that I wanted to look one way or another. I was just very hyper aware that I was being judged for the way that I looked. And given the conversation that's happening at school or with my peers is very different from the conversation that I was having at home. It was very confusing. My parents would always tell me, "You're so beautiful, you're so smart," but you think your parents are just saying that because they're your parents. But when I got to college, I went to school in Texas in a small school called St. Edward's, and it was the first time I was around a truly diverse group of people. I had friends that were Asian, Indian, Native American. And I started to see that the reason I felt so insecure before was because I felt like the one odd man out. And my insecurity came from feeling kind of left out or not understood. But then when you're in this mix of all these different types of people, I started to see, oh, these things that I once thought made me stand out are really what makes me unique. And then I started to accept myself as who I am. I stopped trying to convince people I was one way. I stopped trying to explain who I was to people. And, again, still a journey because it still took quite a bit of time. But in terms of how I looked at myself, I started to accept the things that I used to think were bad or were flaws in me. One example, I have a very large birthmark. This is going to sound, it's so weird to talk about this because it was such a big insecurity of mine for so long. And now I really don't think about it that often, but I can't say what it's called because I know that it's no longer a PC term. But essentially, it's a really large birthmark that goes from my back to about my knee. When I was younger, it was a lot darker. I think as I've grown and stretched out, it's basically like a lot of pigmentation. When I was a kid, it looked purple. I never wanted to wear a swimsuit. I was always trying to cover my legs because I thought it looked like a bruise. I definitely had teachers pull me aside and say, is everything okay at home? And I'm like, oh no, it's just a birthmark. If I was in a swimsuit in front of people, someone would say something about it. And it was just this thing that I always was trying to hide. And then as I grew older, I thought, I can't hide it. It's on half of my body and I love clothes. I want to wear X, Y, and Z. Eventually I got to just get over it. And I was for years so afraid of someone asking the question, oh, what is that? Until now it's not a second thought. And if someone does ask me, I say, oh, that's a birthmark. And then I move on. Right. So I think that story is just kind of a testament to how you can evolve. Something can take so much out of you and be this thing that, every single day I would think about this huge birthmark and how am I going to hide it? How am I going to make sure no one sees it? And now it's not a second thought, right? So, moving on into like later in life, confidence in dating. I was never really that confident in myself when I was growing up. Boys weren't interested in me. They weren't asking me out. I definitely can tell plenty of stories that were probably pretty embarrassing and heartbreaking for me of, me telling a boy that I liked him and him saying, oh, I don't like you like that. Or not even, I don't like you like that, but like, oh, don't talk to me at school, And which if you see me now and the way that I live my life probably doesn't make a lot of sense, right? Now I have this confidence, but again, it's coming from me accepting these things that I used to feel like made me flawed, if you will. I think also confidence comes from who you surround yourself with. And I don't mean surround yourself with yes men, right? But I mean, surround yourself with people who see you for who you truly are. So when I look back at my life and think about the times I was the most insecure and the most unconfident, if you will, were times where I was around people who I felt like retrospectively, right? I felt like had a different view of who I really was. And I felt so insecure because felt like I was always trying to prove to someone, that I'm a nice person or that I care about people or that whatever misconception someone had. But I think as you grow older, you start to, one, learn more about yourself and then learn more about who you want to surround yourself with. And I think one of the best things I've done for myself is surround myself with really strong, confident, supportive women. And we can get into men in a minute, but when it comes to that circle that you surround yourself with, finding people who really are willing to get to know you for who you are, even if they are different. They don't have to look like you. They don't have to come from the same background as you. As long as they're willing to see you for who you are. I always say I try my best to see myself through the lens of the people that love me, right? Because sometimes it's really hard to look in the mirror and love yourself on some days, especially because we're all so critical, overly critical, I should say, of ourselves. But think about how you talk to someone that you love, right? Your mom might look in the mirror and say, oh, I'm getting older and I have all these wrinkles and, I don't feel like myself anymore. But you look at your mom and say, all you see is love. You just see your mom. Same thing with your friends. Maybe your friend just had a baby and is trying to keep off baby weight, right? And they're not feeling like themselves and they're not feeling confident, but you see them and you're like, my friend just birthed a child. My friend just did something really incredible. And she's, this is such a beautiful time in her life. You're seeing this person in such a different way. And I just think if we can all try to see ourselves through the lens of the people that love us, that helps a ton with confidence. And now this is something I do all the time. I have a few group chats with my girlfriends, but if I'm feeling down, it's really hard to ask for help. But if I'm feeling down, I will text a friend or text my group chat and say, I'm feeling, I'm feeling off today, or I need a little confidence boost, or, just I need a friend. I have one from my friend Lauren. We have this kind of like code language where, we're both working from home, and I'll text her and be like, I need a meeting. And that means, okay, she'll find some time in her schedule, block it out in her calendar, even if it's just 15 minutes. And sometimes you just need a pep talk. I'll shout out Serena Kerrigan, who's been a friend, but also she's, her online presence is the queen of confidence, right? And she does these like mirror talks where she talks herself up in the mirror, which I think is such a good thing to do, right? But sometimes that's not enough, and that's okay. It's okay to need, I think it's okay to need outside reassurance, as long as you're really cautious and particular about who that outside reassurance is coming from. Like I said, people who love you, who support you, who see you for who you really are, and who can also be honest with you, right? Because there are some times when, we do have real flaws. If I'm having an off day and maybe I say something a little mean to someone, right? We all do that, right? I want my friends to be able to say, I love you, you're a great person, but like that was a little off, right? And I think that helps, because as long as you're constantly trying to be your best and do your best, you're going to feel more confident in yourself, right? And so yeah, I think that is a big pillar of confidence, is really surrounding yourself with people who know you, who love you, and who are going to support that confidence in you. And then let's see, another element of confidence, we can talk about dating, right? Because it's the elephant in the room. Do we want to get our validation from romantic relationships? No, but it's part of all this. And I think for a long time, I used to get my romantic validation from what I could provide to somebody else. And that's a very unhealthy way of being, because we can't be at 100% of the time. So I found myself where when I was feeling really up and okay, I'm on top of everything, I've been on top of my workouts and I'm doing well at work. It was really easy to be confident in my relationship. But when I wasn't doing well in those things, it was really hard, because I'd look at myself and be like, well, I'm not providing anything, so what value do I have? And I think confidence in dating also comes from being really sure of who you are and giving yourself grace. And of course, choosing the right partner, choosing someone to be around who's going to see you and love you again for who you are. But when it comes to dating, I see a lot of my girlfriends, and here's the thing. I was married for a bit. I'm kind of new to dating. I'll do a whole episode on dating like a divorcee, but I do think having a long period of time where I wasn't in the dating scene has helped me in a way, because I think it's hard to stay confident when you're dating, when you're kind of constantly interacting with people who only know a small portion of you. And let's be frank, when you're on the first couple of dates, they kind of are there to judge you. That sounds harsh, but it's kind of true, right? You're interviewing to see, okay, do we want to take this further and get to know each other? And I think I see a lot of my girlfriends losing their confidence when they start to date someone, and maybe after the first date or two, the guy's no longer interested. They get ghosted, or it's not a good feeling. That's not a good feeling for anyone. But to kind of blend that last point of surrounding yourself with people who know you and love you, you can't let your confidence be rocked by someone who does not know you, right? There are multiple versions of you. I've heard this. I'm trying to remember where I heard this from, and I think it might have been my therapist. But actually, it probably was my therapist. She's very great. But she had told me that there's a version of you for every person you've ever met, right? And that version of you is very different depending on who it is. I think the version of myself that I know is the most complete version because I have, being in my own body, have seen every interaction, have seen, all my highs and lows. I have the most well-rounded view of who I am. Anybody else that meets you is developing their perception of you based on whatever interactions they've had recently with you. So if you're dating, this person is developing an idea of you based on this one little interaction, and maybe you were a little nervous and it came off a little bit cold. Maybe you were rushing from work and were a little frazzled, right? And maybe that's not the best representation of you. And it's also just a small representation of you. And it can be really hard when you're kind of putting yourself out there and being vulnerable to have someone essentially judge you. And no, it's just something that when I hear my friends talk about it, and I'm guilty of it too, but I think it's a little bit easier to see it with a bird's eye view when you're talking to someone else, right? I've noticed that amongst my friends that watching a friend of mine who's super confident, who I see as being gorgeous, successful in their career, kind and generous, being rocked by going on a couple of dates with someone and then they ghost them. And I say, but they don't know you. You can't let that be the thing that takes your confidence away. Look, if everyone you love in your life is coming to you and saying, girl, or boy, right? But girl, things are off with you. You're not seeming like yourself, or, hey, I know you're going through something, but you've been off and you've been kind of being a little mean, or, I feel like you haven't really been taking care of yourself. Are you okay? That's coming from a place of love, right? But when someone doesn't really know you, you can't base your confidence off of that. It's not healthy and it's not accurate. So I think that's really important when it comes to dating. But beyond that, confidence in general, I think, it's coming from accepting yourself and accepting your uniqueness and knowing look, there's certain things you can't change. And there are 8 billion people in the world. Not everybody's going to like you, just like you're not going to like everybody in the world, right? So you can't let those things knock you, or someone, I've been in that place where I've had my confidence rock. Maybe I've met someone a few times and I'm like, oh, I'd really love to be their friend, but I realize they're really not interested in being my friend. Could I let that rock my confidence? Absolutely. And may it rock my confidence for a little bit, maybe a few minutes. I try to not let myself get rocked like that for too long, but absolutely. But then you come back to yourself and say, I say this in my head to myself all the time, that there are 8 billion people in this world. Not everybody has to like me. I don't have to like everybody, and that is okay. We weren't built to be around this many people in general. So it's okay if that's not the case. But when it comes to my own confidence, I really do try to focus on accepting my flaws. And then also, if there's something that I really don't like about myself that's making me feel not so confident, I check in, right? Is this something that is truly a flaw that I need to fix? Or is this something that I'm just being insecure about? And I know that it's such a hard line to work with, but I'll give you an example. I am someone who can come off as very cold. I know this about myself. Is that necessarily a flaw? Maybe not, but it's something that for me, I decided I wanted to change for myself because I felt like I was coming off cold because I was guarding myself. And I know that if I want to make deeper connections with people, I need to be vulnerable. So I started working on that in myself to be very vulnerable, and knowing that, okay, that means sometimes I'm going to cry in front of people and kind of lose control of my emotions. It means sometimes I'm going to tell my friends something that might make them see me as what I would have previously thought as weak, right? But I've realized in opening myself up to letting someone see what I previously thought as flaws is making me vulnerable, and therefore making me more real and fixing this quote flaw that I felt that I had of being cold and replacing that with vulnerability. And I feel like that has made me more confident, not because people like me more because of that, but because I feel like I'm being a more honest version of myself. So it is easier for me in a lot of ways now to feel confident knowing at the end of the day, I want someone to see me, know me, and love me for who I really am, not for what I'm portraying to someone or, the cold version of me that I feel like might have been more palatable or less, dramatic or less vulnerable, whatever it was. And having that, fixing that flaw of myself. Again, maybe using the word fixing is not the right terminology, but I feel like that is something that it was a healthy fix, right? Versus the story I told before where I was really insecure about my birthmark and knowing at the time for years, I could have gotten different laser surgeries and this, that, the other thing to fix it. But at the end of the day, that wasn't a real flaw, right? That wasn't something that needed to be fixed. That was something that I needed to accept. So I think when you're trying to find confidence on your own and you're critiquing yourself, ask yourself of these things, even write it out and go down the list and say, is this something that I need to change about myself, or is this something I need to accept about myself? And I think your gut's going to tell you what the right answer is, right? You'll know if you're feeling like when I was a kid, I was feeling insecure about looking the way that I looked in the space that I was in, right? Typically being the only Black person in a space full of white people, I knew that I was insecure and I wasn't feeling confident in those spaces, but not that was something I needed to change about myself. It was something that I needed to be more confident in myself. And if I, as a Black woman, am not accepted by you or not viewed in the same eyes that I feel like I should be, that's not my problem, that's your problem. And so I think going through that list of things and asking yourself those questions, is this something I need to change, or is this something I need to accept about myself? And look, I'll be honest, there's also things that you want to change about yourself that you probably don't need to. I'll be frank, I have my boobs done. I think they look great in this shot. But that is something that I would be lying if I didn't say that it makes me more confident, right? But when I decided to get my breasts done, I did not look at it as something that was going to change me or make me feel better. I think I did it about maybe 8 months before I'd gotten married and not divorced, but has nothing to do with my boob job. But, I think I would be remiss to not mention the things that I do that definitely help me feel more confident that are maybe a little bit superficial. And, I think it's okay that this conversation is a little bit more nuanced, right? Because not everything is black and white. And I'm sitting here telling you I'm this confident person and I've found a way to accept my flaws and do this, that, and the other thing. And I wear makeup. I have hair extensions. I have had my boobs done. I get Botox, which maybe seems a little counterintuitive to someone who's saying that they find confidence from within, but it's just the truth, right? I just think, you can't do one without the other. How about that, right? If I'm going to decide to change something about myself or enhance something about myself, I can't look at that as being, oh, this is the fix, right? I need to also be doing the work internally. If I'm, my weight fluctuates a lot, tends to do with stress. When I'm, heavier than I tend to normally be, does that make me feel a certain way? Absolutely. Do I still have to find my confidence in myself in that way? Yes. But am I going to get myself to the gym and make sure that I'm doing the things that make me feel good? Absolutely. Because when I've gained weight, it's not that I'm necessarily looking in the mirror and seeing myself as fat, right? That's not what I see. What I do is I look in the mirror and say, oh, this isn't a person who's taking care of their body. Because I know, okay, I've gained weight because I've been really stressed and I haven't been sleeping as well as I should have. I haven't been getting up and moving my body. I'm not fueling my body with the things that I need to fuel it with. And that is the real issue. The weight gain is the product of all these other things that I'm not doing to take care of myself. So I think to kind of like summarize that, your confidence comes from your willingness to take a good hard look at yourself and say, is this something I need to change? Or is this something I need to accept about myself? It comes from surrounding yourself with people who love you and listening to those people with both their critiques and their praises. It comes from accepting yourself for who you are, for the things that are important to you, for the flaws that you might have, and for all the things that you feel like make you uniquely yourself. And I think it comes from really just self-love. That's really at the core of all of this, is finding ways to love yourself, because your confidence is going to show through that. You're going to walk differently. You're going to talk differently. You're going to see yourself differently, and people around you will start to see that as well. So I know this episode kind of might sound a little preachy to people, and I know all of this is easier said than done. But given it's a question I've gotten, and it's a question that, a topic that my friends and I talk a lot about, I just figured it was a good thing to share with you guys, because it is a journey. And I think it's really easy to see someone who's, putting themselves out on social media and, dressing the way that I do and doing X, Y, and Z, and seeing them as very confident, which is true. I am confident, but I have worked really hard to get to that place. And I'm not confident all the time, 24 hours a day. It's a work in progress. And I think that's an important kind of veil to lift off of this idea of being confident, is that it's not 24/7. It's not guaranteed. And it takes work and self-acceptance and self-love. So I guess I'll wrap it up with that, and just hope that you guys can take some of my words and use them to guide you through whatever you might be going through in terms of your own self-confidence, and know that you are beautiful and you are capable of finding that self-love and confidence in yourself. So thank you, It Girls, and speak to you soon.